Without change, something sleeps inside us. The sleeper must awaken.
Hello and welcome back to another We Ourselves video. And today I want to talk about something that I find troubling. And that's this perception and this belief in our community, the Black community, that the first Black Panther movie was a fluke, or that the movie was lightning in a bottle, or that the first Black Panther movie was this once-in-a-lifetime cultural touchstone, and no movie coming after it, i.e. Wakanda Forever, could ever hope to equal, let alone top what the first Black Panther earned in the box office. And I just want to say this today, that is not true. And I want to tell you why. With all of this talk about recasting T'Challa or recasting T'Challa as a variant in all the live streams and the group live streams and the individual videos and articles and posts, and I watch and participate in all of those things, but I have noticed that some people are saying that what happened in the first Black Panther movie can't be replicated. And this reminds me of the Blade video that I did about Mahershala Ali's Blade. And when I quoted in that video how Mahershala Ali wanted his Blade movie to be his Black Panther, I had people who came into my comments and said, well, that's not possible because Black Panther was this once-in-a-lifetime cultural event. It was a touchstone, and no Blade movie by Mahershala Ali or anybody else for that matter could attain the same thing. And at the time, I just kind of let that go because we're talking about two different franchises. But as people get into this discussion about the reality of finally getting T'Challa back in a recasted Black Panther, I'm finding people are repeating this, particularly in defense of Wakanda Forever. And I have to say that this is not true. And I remember when Wakanda Forever came out and I was talking with my friend about it. And of course, I didn't like it, but he was trying to defend it. And his defense at the time was, well, every second movie in a franchise does worse than the first one. And of course, I said that's not true because just off the top of my head, I could think of more than one movie, a second movie in a series that did better than the first. Just take two iconic examples, both of which were done by James Cameron, by the way, and just look at them. The second Aliens film, plural, did better than the first Alien movie and became far more widely popular. For one reason, the first Alien movie was a horror movie. And it was the first iteration, it was the first step in that universe. Whereas the second one, it had more humor, it was action and adventure, and therefore it had appeal to a wider audience, not just here in the US, but around the world. The second example, also from James Cameron, was the second Terminator movie. The first one was a hard R sci-fi movie that I remember me and my little brother stayed up after our parents went to bed and watched it on one of the streaming services, one of the cable services. But the second one had more appeal, and it did way more than the first one, and it also revolutionized the way special effects were done in these types of movies. And that's just two examples. There are plenty other ones. But when I was talking to my friend, it made me realize, why are we comparing apples to oranges? Why don't we compare apples to apples? By the time Wakanda Forever came out, we had 12 years of MCU established process. It was the most successful film series of all time in American box office history. So my thing is, why not look at the MCU? How good or bad did the second films in an MCU series perform? When it came to the MCU, the majority of the films, the second films in a sequence, they did better financially than the first. In fact, at the time, and this is before Captain Marvel or the Marvels came out and really, skewed the research. But at the time, there were 9 movies within the MCU that had a second movie, a sequel. And out of those, 6 did better at the box office, far better at the box office than the first movie. Only 3 did not. That being Age of Ultron, which even though it still made over $1 billion, it did not do as well as the first Avengers movie. The second was the second Iron Man. Depending on what you did with adjustments for inflations, there are times when it just eked out more than the first movie, and then there were times when it didn't. But even there, it was still neck and neck with the first one in terms of box office earning. And the third example at the time was Wakanda Forever. And it had the worst performance versus the first movie of any of the MCU movies. Up to that time, it was just these 3 movies out of the 9 Marvel movies that had sequels, and Wakanda Forever was the worst performing sequel. And that's what I said in my video. So the idea that Wakanda Forever could not be as successful as the first Black Panther, it didn't make any sense because in the MCU, that's exactly what happened. The second movies were better than, or if they weren't, they were right there neck and neck with the first movie. Wakanda Forever was the one that broke that series. And the reason that it wasn't as successful as Black Panther was not because it was inevitable.
I am inevitable.
It wasn't because Black Panther was this cultural touchstone that no, we can never touch again. No, Wakanda Forever wasn't as successful as the first Black Panther because of the decisions made by Ryan Coogler, Nate Moore, and Kevin Feige. The idea that our thoughts become our reality is critical when dealing with a group mindset. The talking points and agreed upon narrative after Avengers Endgame is a perfect example of this concept. At the time, just about every YouTuber out there had a similar statement when they talked about the success of Endgame, that the MCU will never reach the heights of Endgame. It's like, why are you speaking this into the universe? Why are you saying that the MCU will never reach the heights of Endgame? If you believe that and you get all the tens of thousands of people with all their watch hours to agree with you, then it's like you're trying to make that your reality. And I know a lot of people want to back away from that, but what did the Jedi say? Your thoughts become your reality. We got the MCU that we wanted. The MCU is falling on its face. So if you were one of the people that said we will never attain the levels of Endgame, well, you got what you wanted. And so when I look at people now who were saying the same thing about Black Panther, what makes me afraid is that we ourselves, we are the ones that are making ourselves accept less. We are speaking this into reality, and it is affecting our thoughts, and our thoughts are becoming our reality, our default way of looking at things. Black Panther wasn't a once-in-a-lifetime achievement. Its success was purposeful. First of all, and again, not to offend anybody, but when we do that, we're not really respecting the hard work that went into make Black Panther. We're not respecting, Chadwick Boseman. We ourselves are not respecting our own people. You're not respecting what he did when he said, we're not going to speak with British accents. We're going to learn the African dialect, and that's how we're going to speak. It was purposeful when he had African drummers come on set from time to time to play the drums because he was invoking a certain type of spirit and energy. Black Panther was introduced in Civil War. There was a setup for it. They knew they were going to use Wakanda as one of the battlefields, so they set it up early. Then the placement of the movie. And all the hard work that went into the music, the hard work that went into the costumes in which they got an award for, all the thoughtful and hard work and the research into bringing all these elements from all of these different African cultures into the Wakanda costumes and clothing, which paid off. All of that was hard work by a lot of people to make this movie successful. Then you add in the fact that this character, it was the first live action iteration of him for a character that's been around since the 60s and has generations of fans. And now you're going to introduce this character to them. It's a lifetime dream, and you're going to introduce it to the world. It wasn't lightning in a bottle. It was all the ingredients that were put together to make it work. Look at it this way. We just came out of the holidays. Say you went over to a friend's house or somebody's house and they made a special dish or they made a special dessert, and it's the best thing that you tasted. If you sat back from the table and patted your stomach and you said to the person that made that good meal, that was lightning in a bottle. You'll never be able to do that again. Do you think that's going to be a compliment to them? Do you think they're going to take that as a compliment? Do you think you're honoring them? You're insulting them because they're going to look at you and say, what do you mean it's lightning in a bottle? I prepped it. I got all the ingredients. I've had experience cooking this. I put all of this time and effort to make this meal, and you're saying it's a perfect meal, but now you're telling me that it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing that I can never do it again. It's ridiculous when you put it that way, but that's what we're doing when we say that the first Black Panther was lightning in a bottle. It wasn't. It was preparation, talent, and ability, and timing, yes, but all of those things went into making it. And so my question is, why are we so ready to accept less? In my opinion, our willingness to accept less is almost like a programming that kicks into motion when we're ready to tear ourselves down. And I like what Dre Max said, and shout out to him for talking about it on a recent show. He said it's the advertisement, and he had the example of how we can all sing the lyrics to all these old commercials. I remember seeing a guy talking to a group of young kids, middle school kids, and what he was doing, he was proving to the teachers that these kids have an amazing capacity to take in information. And so he played all kind of music, even country music, and they can identify the songs. Then he started singing jingles for corporations, and they were able to finish the jingle in time, in tune. Even for life insurance. What the hell does a middle school kid care about life insurance? But they knew the jingle for the life insurance commercials. Why? As Dre Max says, it was repeated and repeated and repeated. And so for us, there's this advertisement that to recast T'Challa is disrespectful. That Black Panther was a once-in-a-lifetime cultural touchstone. It was lightning in a bottle. All of these things that we have been advertised to, these commercials, these ideas that have been played over and over and over to us, these words and these ideas, they became our reality. Again, like the Jedi says, your thoughts become your reality. Well, what they said, we are now saying, and by saying it, we have changed our thoughts, and now our thoughts are our default reality. We default to taking less, agreeing to less, because we have been culturally conditioned to take less. And so, again, shout out to Dre Mack for talking about that, but I wanted to go deeper. It's like, well, why are we susceptible to this advertising, to this negative programming that gets us to accept less? It's because we have been culturally conditioned to accept less. Why? Because of what we've been through in this country. The Department of Justice recently released their report on the Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre. And it wasn't a race riot. That was the propaganda that was done by the newspapers at the time. What it was and what the report shows, it was a coordinated, almost military type attack on this successful Black community. They used this racial incident as the starting point, but the people around Tulsa, Oklahoma were organized. You had thousands of white men, women, and children who came in to terrorize, torture, and unalive, and more importantly, to steal and pillage from the Black community. There were already stories passed down by survivors that the white people came in, was putting on their clothes, were taking their things out of the house. Well, this DOJ report substantiated that. You had people who rolled up trucks to Black people's house to loot it, which is odd considering that fake viral message that went out that showed a Black person who was clearing their house in California to get away from the fire, and they called them a looter, and then that thing gets millions of likes or retweets or whatever. That is the racial violence that happened that helped to traumatize and seep that message into our very DNA, our genes, epigenetics and stuff. There is a study of that, how we pass down the trauma so that it has become part of our very fiber and our very being, so that now when we have something that is successful, we ourselves are the ones who put it on a pedestal. That's how we take it out of the mix. We put it on a pedestal to where it can never be achieved again. That's our default way that kicks in, that subroutine that kicks in, that helps us to keep that success safe. We put it in a safe place that is removed from our everyday world, so that we think by putting in that safe place, it will not be taken away from us. And we do that to ourselves. As Dre Max says, we've accepted the advertisement because we are susceptible to it. We have been culturally conditioned to be susceptible to it. So when somebody gives us a narrative which is meant to dampen what we are doing, to dampen our success, we ourselves latch on to it and we take it and we run with it. It's a default survival mechanism that we have to get over. We have to get over it. Because when we do that, that is why we shut down real legacy. What we are calling legacy is nothing but memorials, because we put that thing up on that pedestal and all we can do is gaze at it. All we can do is memorialize it. All we can do is have chicken dinners once a year and talk about it. We memorialize this great achievement that happened in the past, but we never see how that was a foundation for what we should be doing now and into the future. That is real legacy, and we see it in front of our face every time. We pay for it. We go and watch these things. Like I said, that Spider-Man No Way Home movie was the end all of any argument against recasting T'Challa because you had 3 iterations of Spider-Man in that movie. And they did not take each other out. They were not catfighting. They were in there together, and the first 2 acted like older brothers to the current one so that they can pass the mantle to him so that he could be a good Spider-Man in his universe. And you see that he divested himself of all the Tony Stark Iron Lad stuff, and he made his own suit like they did, and he went out at the end of the movie as Spider-Man. And we were part of that audience disproportionately that got that movie almost $2 billion. We celebrate when other people do it in their community, but we don't do it in ours. We want to fight with each other. We don't want another Blade. It only can be one Blade. Again, memorializing Wesley Snipes before the man has even died. We don't need Mahershala Ali. And they know that. And that's why they play with us. We got to get out of that one and done mentality. I understand some of us don't realize that we're doing it as a default survival technique. We're afraid to have something that's truly good. Not all of us, some people, they don't care. People like Beyonce, they go and do what they're going to do no matter what genre they're in. That's why some people are saying we need to have the same attitude that Beyonce has. And I agree with them. I just saw a music documentary not too long ago done by Calvin Michaels. He's a brilliant young storyteller, and he has done a lot of music documentaries on his channel. Well, he just did a documentary on Mariah Carey, and he showed how she had hit song and album after hit for over 20 years. Some of us look at what we did before and say, we're going to do better. That's true legacy. That's why I'm hoping that Aldous Hodge stays with Amazon and his series, and he does Alex Cross, and he makes that his definitive role. That is true legacy. When we idolize the first Black Panther movie as if it came down from the mountain, that Moses himself brought it down from the mountain and is untouchable or unmatchable, we're essentially doing what the anti-recasters are doing. I understand that we're doing it as a default survival technique, but we got to get beyond that. We have to leave behind the one and done mythology. So anyway, that's what I want to talk about today. As always, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and share the video. And I will see you the next time.
The sleeper has awakened!